The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
The Buss family is selling their portion of the Lakers to Dodgers owner Mark Walter and the Guggenheim Group for $10 billion.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
This is something that has been, I guess, discussed, what the exit strategy for the Buss family would be. And
at some point, if nothing else, if not this year, this month, this day, the idea that at some point, this is something we'll talk about in this show and over the course of a full-length show coming up later, just the idea that the Buss family remaining the principal owners of this team in 2025 in the landscape of modern sports team ownership was simply not tenable anymore.
Yeah, it was getting a lot harder, to say the very least. Mark Walter already owned, I believe, 20% of the team and had, as I mentioned, right of first refusal to purchase the rest should the Buss family decide to put their stake up. I believe it was 66% of the team. And that is what happened on Wednesday. The deal is not yet finalized, as is being reported. The Athletic is actually reporting that the sale could reach as much as $12 billion in value. But given how the line of succession here was fairly well understood and fairly well known, you would expect that the vast majority of this is settled. Otherwise, the news wouldn't be getting out. So the Buss family selling to Mark Walter, owner of the Dodgers. Should mention that if you don't, if you missed that part. This is a massive development, not just for the Lakers, obviously, but across the NBA.
This is huge. I mean, the Lakers, this set a record, whether this ends up $10 billion, $12 billion. This was the highest sale of any North American, U.S., however you want to phrase it, sports team in history. Like, this is as big of a sale as we've ever seen. And I imagine unless the Yankees or the Cowboys go on sale anytime soon, this is a record that is going to hold, because those are the only two teams in sports that you could even picture an ownership change happening, because teams like the Warriors, the Celtics, they've all gone through recent ownership changes, and those are not about to change anytime soon. It's a record that it's going to hold for a while. There are massive implications from this sale, whether you're talking about culturally within the team, whether you're talking about different ways that the money will, I think we both feel, positively affect this team moving forward. Some of the things that the Buss family, whether you think they were unwilling, unable, a little bit of both, to dedicate towards this team financially, that is not going to be a problem with Mark Walter and the Guggenheim money that he has, and the stakes that he has, and all these different teams, and just the type of wealth that we are now talking about at the head, that's now financing the Lakers. This is a massive sea change. I mean, to put this in perspective, the Buss family has owned this team since 1979. Like, Dr. Buss bought this team heading into Magic Johnson's rookie season.
Pretty solid return on that initial $67 million investment. That wasn't even just for the Lakers, which in and of itself, to go from 67 million to 10 to 12 billion would be again a nice return. That also included the Kings, the Forum, and a ranch. So again, solid purchase for the Buss family there. Time to hire a good capital gains attorney. But I think, the big question here is what.
Can I just have Linda do it?
Maybe. Good. The big question here, though, is how this affects the Lakers and how they're going to operate, because Jeannie Buss is going to continue to be the governor of the team going forward. How long that lasts is something perhaps we'll talk about in tonight's show. The Mark Cuban example in Dallas could be a pretty good template here. So we'll hold that for a second. But for the time being, Jeannie Buss is going to remain the governor of the team and all this. And the Lakers obviously can't suddenly just start handing out gigantic Shohei-style deferred contracts and spending $500 million and all this, because there are rules about how the NBA operates. But I think there are two places that my reaction initially was, you'll see a huge difference. The first is infrastructure, where the Lakers, while they have historically spent on payroll, I don't think they've really, they always spend a lot of money on players, maybe not as much as you want, whatever, but historically they've spent a lot there. They have not spent money as much as you would think a team like the Lakers would in other places,
should. Forget the would, should.
Assistant coaches, front office, training staff, scouting, all these other things are things that the Lakers have traditionally not spent as much money on. They have had small brain trusts and things like that. Some of that is culture, but the culture can be impacted, whether consciously or unconsciously, by either not wanting to or not being able to spend certain amounts of money. So you can justify, well, we just like a small culture, but really you're at least somewhat affected by your finances. And the second is going to be the way the team is run. Like how the Dodgers have a way of doing things. Andrew Friedman, for example, is technically not the GM of that team. He's like the president of whatever. And there's a different guy who's a GM, and they have this collaborative structure and architecture that I think that will eventually be replicated with the Lakers, whether that includes Rob Pelinka in the short or long term. Short term, yes. Long term remains to be seen. But it is going to be different. The days 5 years from now, I'll say this, the Lakers will not have like a 3-person basketball ops department.
Well, this is something I will make this prediction right now because I feel confident saying it. If Rob Pelinka is not willing moving forward to be more of a collaborator with more people around him, that if they are not at his true equal level, are pretty close, he will not be long for this job. I'm willing to make that prediction right now.
So,
because frankly, there's always been, I think, an accurate perception that if the Lakers wanted to do better than Rob Pelinka, they could. I'm not saying that he's the worst exec in the league. I'm not saying that he's the worst person running basketball ops in the NBA, but we've both been pretty candid in our opinion that Jeannie Buss could do better than Rob Pelinka.
Yeah.
A lot of ways should do better, or at the very least should have more people around Rob Pelinka with an actual voice. And Rob has been very successful at continually consolidating and shielding his power. I would be stunned if that remains a constant moving forward.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Oklahoma City is 1 win away from an NBA championship.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As we head into Game 6, the Thunder are 1 win away from clinching their first NBA championship in team history. Where do you think this ranks in in terms of biggest Oklahoma sports moments ever?
Well, first off, Rylan, thank you so much for having me on such a momentous day.
I'm glad you could make it. I mean, who better than Joey Pods?
So, I think it would be one of the biggest moments. I mean, certainly in Oklahoma sports history. I mean, all you go to is, OU football, which is king in this state, but that obviously isn't a fan base that extends across the state like the Thunder does. So I think it would be one of the biggest sports moments, maybe the biggest sports moment. And even aside from sports, one of the biggest moments in Oklahoma City history. I mean, we haven't been a state for that long. We haven't been a city for that long. It's still the new frontier out here, Rylan, and the Thunder having come here in 2008 to be back in their second NBA Finals, to maybe win their first NBA championship in franchise history since relocating. I mean, it's a momentous day.
I mean, how long do you get to claim the new frontier, by the way? I love Oklahoma, but it reminds me a lot of Lawton, where, they built a brand new Walmart when I was in like the second grade, and we still to this day call it the new Walmart. It's been there 20 years.
We're the 46th state.
46 out of 50. We've had a few come our way. We got to act like we've been there before as a state, I think. But Joe, I agree with you wholeheartedly, except for the new frontier part. I think that when you look at this situation, like the Thunder and the team and the city and the state have never been here before, unless you really enjoyed watching the Lawton Fort Sill Cavalry hoist some trophies back in your day in the CBA. And it's really interesting, too, because I think that the NBA in large part hasn't been here. Like, there's not very many teams who can stake their claim to what the Thunder might be able to pull off. Obviously, they still have to go win one more game. But if they're able to win this championship, this is a rare situation where the history of an organization spans back long enough for over 90% of their fan base to have a personal bond touch point with throughout every single chapter of this organization. Like, the Celtics, for example. If you grew up a Celtics fan in the 2010s, like the era of Bob Cousy and them boys, like that is
about Sam Jones,
like that is a generationally passed down story, right? That you didn't have any sort of resignation with, if you will. Whereas the Thunder are such a unique spot because everyone listening to this who's a diehard Thunder fan has lived and died with every single moment of the organization leading up to this championship, if they're able to pull it off. So like that presents another interesting element of it. Now on the floor, who has the most to gain reputation-wise, legacy-wise, resume-wise with this win?
We're talking players here?
Anyone in the entire organization, from Matty T down.
Shout out Matty T. I think it's Sam Presti. And it's not like Sam Presti has anything left to prove. I mean, he is a world-class basketball executive. He's a genius. He's built 2 championship teams more than a decade apart. And he's the ultimate process over results guy. So then waiting until they get the result to say he's made it would be like counterintuitive to everything he believes. But at the same time, when you look at his legacy, his resume, the only thing that's missing is an NBA title. And I think I wrote about this today for the Oklahoman. It would be like completion for him. Like there would be nothing else for him to achieve. Maybe he wants to stay on and try to see a dynasty through. But he did the hardest part. The hardest part's over. It was getting the Thunder back to this point, to a point where they were very early on in the organization. And this is a guy that was 29 years old in 2007 when the Supersonics hired him as their general manager. And then to get to the finals in 2012, to be back there in 2025, and to now maybe win it. He's going to go down as one of the best basketball GMs of all time, I think.
Yeah, you make a very compelling case, and I think that within that was a true reason why he's not exactly like, why you first go to players is because like Sam has done his job, right? Like whether they win one of these next 2 games or not, the job that Sam Presti and the position that Sam Presti holds is finalized, and it's clear he's built a team good enough to win a championship. Now the players have to go and actually win it one of these next 2 games for this to take place. So like it feels odd, like you mentioned, kind of putting this on the shoulders of Sam Presti when his impact on this, his stamp on this has already been felt. It was felt whenever you clinched the West. It was felt whenever you got back to being a playoff team, and it was felt whenever you got back to the point where you're winning 68 games and like having the best season in Thunder history. So I would say that Shea has the most immediate kind of gratification from a championship. Obviously, this is a lifetime dream for everybody on this roster, from Shea down to Adam Flagler. Like everybody dreams of being in that locker room for an NBA championship. But for Shea to have a clean sweep of like leading the league in scoring, regular season MVP, Western Conference MVP, Finals MVP, championship, and to do it in such a small market, to do it on your terms, to do it with the organization who believed in you to make the initial trade, but also like there were real questions. And you remember this show because you were the beat writer then, not the columnist. There were real questions of like, should the Thunder keep Shea on the ball? Should Josh Giddey be the point guard? Like, what should the Thunder do with Shea? Like the belief and the developmental story of Shea with this specific organization, whenever you see how he's grown, how once he got to a certain point, people then flipped the script and said, well, they're just wasting Shea. They're wasting Shea. They need to trade Shea. She needs to ask out like all these players do, to then winning it in this small market and having a runway here where you can have dynastic talks about this team. I just think puts everything with a nice pink bow on top of it. Like it's a well-wrapped present, and I think that Shea would be at the centerpiece, of course, of a potential finals win.
Yeah, I think Shea probably, behind Sam, I would think of him next. And, this isn't a team where it's not like this is their only chance. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's, about to be 27 years old. So he's got much of his career ahead of him. But if you think about it, there's only been a dozen plus guys to ever win MVP and an NBA title in the same year. I think about his legacy as far as comparing him to past Thunder greats. I mean, I used to always draw this line of distinction and still do, that Russell Westbrook is the greatest Thunder player in history. Kevin Durant was the best player to ever put on a Thunder uniform. I think Shea has a chance to overtake both of those guys just in what he means to the city, having taken them to a championship if they're to win this. He could retire after they win the title and he'd be an NBA Hall of Famer. I mean, Derrick Rose is the only MVP you question, is he a Hall of Famer? Obviously didn't win an NBA title. For Shea to win MVP and a title at this age, at the efficiency he's doing, I mean, he's really catapulting himself into a conversation that, would have sounded blasphemous a few years ago.
Yeah, and I think that it's if you look at this, it leads into Jalen Williams, who is my fourth. I'll tell you my third after the break, but my fourth is Jalen Williams, because if these two get it right now and they do finish this job, like they surpass, and to me they already have surpassed Kevin and Russ as a duo. Now, again, a duo, not viewing them through the prism of like who's the better individual player or who would you rank higher in all-time greats, but how do they complement one another? How do they help win you basketball games? These two play off of each other so much greater than Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant could play off of one another. And that speaks to the greatness of those two guys individually, to have a partnership where they didn't necessarily gel very well, but they still had massive success, to where if you guarantee that this team will have the 4 or 5 year runway here together, even in the midst of the nasty CBA stuff, like you're at least going to get that long. If they just even have a modicum of luck that team didn't have, like that team continued to run into injuries. They ran into those Golden State Warriors and blew that 3-1 lead. Like they ran into these problems that this team isn't foreseen to run into as of this moment, with knocking on wood and such, that winning a championship right out of the gate does change things. Because you look at the Boston Celtics, if they would have won that 2022 championship and then also won last year's championship, that core of Tatum and Brown is viewed so much differently right now than it is presently, even with the Tatum injury. And now you've kind of gotten your version of that 22 championship, and you still have room ahead of you to keep building on that if you can finish the job in game 6 or game 7 and win this series. So I think that J-Dub is in there as well.
The NBA playoffs are almost over. In fact, they could end this very evening. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action while you still have a chance. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props from three-pointers to steals and assists. There's so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You can place that first $5 bet on some NFL playoff dark horses. The Carolina Panthers sit at plus 240 to reach the postseason. The Bears plus 190 and the new-look Raiders plus 320. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
It is time for Game 6. Can the Pacers stay alive? What is Tyrese Haliburton's status, and how can the Pacers adjust with or without him?
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast.
I'm excited for Game 6 tomorrow night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and obviously everything else leading up to that as far as availability from you-know-who.
8:30 tips are killing me. The Fever have a 7 o'clock tip. Gonna get home early, right? Things are great. Oh, it's the longest game ever. Oh, there's a lot of stuff to work on. Yay, exciting. Yes, that is the big topic. Talked about it yesterday with Rylan Stiles. More from Rick this morning. We're talking before practice, so Tyrese will talk later. But Rick with you and Kevin Bowen this morning saying game time decision for Tyrese Haliburton. Of course, there's long-term considerations, but it's the finals. It's the finals, James. My strong gut feeling is that he will play, given the comments he made to us after Game 5 about this moment and this situation. But he will certainly not be 100%, as we saw in Game 5 and really throughout the series as he's been reaching for the back of that leg, the tape on it, the pregame treatment, all that. Can they do this without? I mean, what does he need to do in this? Like, if you're Tyrese Haliburton, how are you changing your approach to a game like this?
Man, I don't even know if you can, because your leg is so important, right? You know, you need that to run around, and it is concerning. I'll probably push back a little on Tony. After hearing about the MRI and hearing Rick say it's a game time decision, I'm thinking, man, he's more up in the air than I thought he was after saying he'd play. So We'll see how that goes. But I also think that, you know, if he is available, he has to get off the ball probably. I can't imagine him bringing the ball up, initiating the offense every single time down like he normally does if he's on a bum leg. And so does that mean you get Andrew Nembhard to bring the ball up and you get Tyrese running off some actions? But even then, I'm like, running, like we saw him at the end of game, 5, and he was not the player we've seen throughout these playoffs, the one that can make the big shots, make the big plays. So it's a tough question, man. I almost feel like if he's compromised to that degree, would you be better off just rolling with a healthy or tired T.J. McConnell over a limping Tyrese Haliburton?
Yeah, that's the question. What percentage of Haliburton is actually worth value to play at all? Right? Like to throw out the long-term injury risk, should that even be a thing that's a part of this? And look, every leg muscle there is, right?
Yeah, you hear calf, and you start thinking, Kevin Durant and Damian Lillard. For me personally,
yeah, yes. On this in the playoff stage too for both, like you got to be careful. I know the Pacers will be, but again, it's the finals. Like this is the thing that you do this for. And like Aaron Gordon pushed through against OKC, and this was not. What was his? I don't think it was calf. Hamstring, right? Yeah, and he was good enough to play. Like it was a good enough percentage of Aaron Gordon that it was worth it, but it was clearly not the Aaron Gordon, and he was a crucial player in that series. Like that is a similar situation without the specific muscle that Haliburton is dealing with. I agree with you that, I mean, he almost was off ball a lot in game 5. Like he was in the corners way more, and they were not like initiating with anyone specific over and over again. But, a lot of their free flowing stuff did not come from Tyrese Haliburton throwing it to someone else and running. And like, he couldn't drive to the paint and then immediately run out to the line. So it's hard for him to get them into their flow and their random stuff when him going into the paint is like a challenge. Like he'd have to be more of a jump shooter in this instance. And that's why the off-ball stuff you're talking about is so important. He is a good catch and shoot player, but like what value does he have as a spacer? And also like he's got to guard someone. And that is really challenging if you have to
I didn't think about that part.
Yeah. And that's a really challenging part if you have to run and change directions a lot in a game like this, right? So, the Thunder, they couldn't have known in Game 5 that this would be a thing. I'm recycling a lot of points I've said about this already, but if they know in Game 6, like their game plan will be different, right? It will just be very hard for him in so many ways.
Absolutely. I mean, does Lou Dort give you the indication he's going to not pounce on any weakness that you have?
Him like Moby Dick if he can.
Yeah, I think my guy Vince Goodwill from Yahoo Sports tweeted out that he was wrestling, and he spelled it WRASSLING, wrestling. And so you wonder if he's compromised and they know that, they smell blood in the water, they're going to go out even more. And this is a defense that Tyrese has already had trouble with during the regular season when he was healthy. They kind of made him a shell of himself. So, again, what can you do to kind of minimize, if he's out there, minimize his ineffectiveness to move around and maximize some of the other guys? And to me, Tony, a lot of it comes down to who can create an advantage off the dribble. I listened to Iman Shumpert after Game 5, and he made some very good points, former NBA player, as he should. When you don't create the advantages, you're going east to west, and that shell defense they're in just gets even harder. And so I look at somebody like Mathurin, Andrew Nembhard, McConnell to a degree when he gets 2 feet in the paint. Can those three, if Tyrese is not himself, create enough advantages off the dribble to change the math a bit, make them move? And ideally, the Pacers want to beat you with the pass, but it's very hard to pass when everyone's in every passing lane because you can't get off the dribble. You can't create an advantage. So it is a tough task to kind of face, especially without one of your leaders. And even if Tyrese is available, like you said, Tony, he's not going to be 100%. So how do you just find a way to survive at this point? But I will say I'm excited, Tony, because very rarely do you get the opportunities for coaches and players to just throw everything out there, because you're not holding any cards back. Like, this isn't Game 1. This isn't Game 2. This is do or die. So you're literally just fighting to survive for one more game, one more day. And that might come with interesting wrinkles and things that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, the guy that I'm the most curious about is Andrew Nembhard. You were at these games last year. No Tyrese Halliburton. No one gave him any chance against Boston in those 2 home games last year. Now, they lost both, so maybe those people were right to some extent. But like he was awesome, right? And he was awesome against the best defense in the league that year. Yeah. And he killed great defenders. Like Drew Holiday was like, man, he's at the rim again. Like whoever it was just couldn't keep him in front. Now that has not happened like at all since then. Like he's had great games. Like we all know about the lore of Andrew Nembhard just balling out for some random nights, but this is like the hardest opportunity to do that against this Thunder team. Like, what if they put Dort on him? That's not unreasonable to me if Halliburton's not 100%, right? So can he do that? I don't know, but he will probably be the primary initiator with the starters. If Halliburton plays, even that might be the case, right? So he's got to be sublime, like perfect. The turnovers he had in Game 5 can't happen, right? He's got to make shots. He's got to be a floor general in a way that he usually is not asked to do. If Halliburton can't play at all, I think Mathurin would start, but because of what you already said. But regardless, he has to be like Game 3, where his north-south pressure is immense, and the Thunder are like, crap, like we can't stop this guy. McConnell, of course, has been huge all series, but the guys who like are involved in the paint but aren't getting there, if this makes sense, Turner and Siakam, those are like the swing guys to me, right? If they can't get mismatches where Siakam's going against smalls because they're not switching the same way, that's going to cut off a lot of water for the Pacers. If Turner can't make those little flip shots he's gotten throughout the series, it hasn't really made in the finals after making them for all the playoffs, that's a big loss for the Pacers, right? So those two also are more important. Basically, everyone who takes a shot in the paint becomes more important, and those 5 are the biggest ones of it. But it's going to be so much harder to generate those good shots. It might feel like Game 1 and 2 where it's like, man, these guys just can't get in the paint.
Absolutely. I mean, Miles is someone who struggled throughout this series, and that's well documented. And again, can you have a game, just one game, where you really put it on him. Like, he has a couple moments throughout the series, a couple plays where he's gone straight through like Chet Holmgren's chest for a bucket. And I'm not saying like your entire offense should be throwing to Miles on the block. He's not the type of player, but occasionally can you get a few of those advantages. Pascal Siakam, I thought in the fourth quarter the other night in Game 5, you saw why he got a max deal, why he is an all-NBA, all-star caliber player. And can he build on that going into Game 6? Can he take the reins and say, okay, we might not have it going like we normally would offensively, but I can still go get us a bucket and make sure we're okay. Because if you think about, I think it was Game 3 that they won, where they were kind of out of sorts early, and it was Siakam just saying, give me the ball, and I'll, get them a little turn fadeaway and get us right. And can he do more of that in Game 6? So, to be quite honest, it doesn't take a genius to figure out. A lot of these guys will have to step up in big, big ways, and who can do it and not to be overwhelmed by their increased role against a defense that will be swarming and jumping everywhere and making things hard on you, because you're not asking people to step up against the Hornets or the Wizards. There's no disrespect to your Wizards, Tony, but there's real stakes here, and there's a really good defense on the other side that will not necessarily just concede anything because you're doing things differently. You can do things differently, and they'll probably stick to what they do best, which is disrupt everything. That defense was everywhere in Game 6. A lot of deflections, a lot of steals, obviously turnovers, and just did them in. And honestly, Tony, my high school coach, I can hear him now yelling that even bad shots, they don't count as turnovers. But in that game itself, Tony, I would even say that they had 3 or 4 more turnovers, quote unquote, based off of just bad shots that you knew you weren't going to make because late in the shot clock and they've defended you so well, you're just chucking it up there like, yeah, it's not a turnover, but it might as well be because you didn't get a good look at the rim.